Welcome to my channel. I have a very special guest, Helen Walters, today, who is a poet, jewelry maker, and potter who has published two books. Have
Yeah,
you written any poetry about the flood in Roswell?
got a couple started, but since it was so hard to go through, I know a lot of people were affected by it. I only had a little bit in storage, but yeah, I have started writing about that as well. They're started. I can't say they're finished. It's like sometimes you put it down, you come back, it's like, oh, okay, I got the lines to do this now. I do want to have some fundraising for the art museum restoration in the future, and I'm looking at the possibility, and I've already talked to the director who's going to talk to the foundation about maybe having a golf tournament where we have poet teas. We would provide poets at each tee off to do a poem before they go on to the next hole. And that's incorporating the arts with the sport. And since golfing is kind of a lucrative sport, I think we could raise money for the arts through that. So Aaron was like, "That's a really unique idea." I said, "But I worked with the Alzheimer's Association up in Albuquerque, and they had people out at each tee, and they had bars and they had food, and I'm like, well, we could do that too, but I think having artists, poets, musicians, even would kind of encourage people to donate to the art museum and our restoration of it." And he's like, "Yeah, we're talking like a year down the line." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not talking about this happening right away. I know this would take some time to organize." But I said, "I'm getting my poets prepared, to writings about golfing, the arts, being outdoors, some lighthearted stuff to keep people chuckling as they're working their way through the course." Um, so that's a future vision I have for poetry in Roswell.
That sounds amazing. I love that. That is so
Yeah,
cool.
and
Um,
it's bringing different people together to work on these projects as well.
yeah, definitely. It seems like such a cool idea. And like you said, golf is lucrative, so
Yeah. Yeah, because people are always trying to find ways to monetize what they're doing. And I said, this isn't going to monetize it for the poets personally, but I want to get another book published of our local poets and maybe do it more locally. I do have someone has told me there is a place here that will publish like chapbooks for us, which if
okay.
somebody wants to get like a small book of 32 poems or something published, they could do it here. I'm working on that, and I am trying to come up with a tea party where we have a nice tea with fancy china and do poetry and have a poet tea party. And possibly senior circle would, she's thinking, they always try to do tea for Mother's Day. She said that would be a nice thing to incorporate with our Mother's Day. And I said, yeah, we've got a lot of good poems about mothers, and it could be something we've personally written or something we've chosen that was written by someone else that was published. I said there's no problem in reading other people's poetry. It's not like singing someone's song and there's copyrights.
Right.
Anybody can read a poem. So, I want to do some community poetry events where we give prompts and they kind of follow along with the prompt, and we do something collectively, maybe even with those prompts. I just want to invite people that are interested in the art of poetry to come out to our groups. Like I said, there's several of them now, different times, or people can come out. So High Prairie Poets Society meets at Grace Community Church at 2 o'clock, the third Saturday of the month. My senior circle group is going to start every Wednesday at Senior Circle. And come on out, and there's coffee and tea available there. My other poetry group at Stellars is going to be the second Saturday of the month about 2 o'clock, and we'll discuss poetry and types of poetry. And sometimes, like one time we did do automobiles. So everybody came in the next week with something about cars, autos, traffic. And that was kind of neat because it's like we have an assignment for next month. You all have to think about this. And if anybody wants to just talk about poetry, come to one of those things. We can discuss their projects, publishing avenues. I'm just starting with that myself. Marketing your poetry. One of our poets from the High Prairie Poet Society, Ann Applegarth, during COVID, she had her book published, Layers of Beauty. It's an inch thick.
Wow.
Yeah, this woman is very prolific. And when I first met her, she said, I'd love to read your poems. I handed her my notebook, and she went through and put post-its of like, this is a great line, or maybe you could use a different word here. And then I found out she had been in publishing
Oh,
professionally. I was like, wow, now I'm really honored to have had her go through and review my poems. And I showed her everything, the poems that I never would show anybody. And I was like, it's okay. I think she's old enough. She understands what I'm talking about.
yes.
So, so yeah, I encourage people to, put their feelings down in words and then come out and express them and read them at the open mic nights. Stellars is a great open mic. It's family friendly. Black Hawk Brewery has open mic nights. I'm not sure when they kind of publicize it. They have to have somebody to run it. I've done things over there. I'm looking for other avenues to do poetry readings at. And it is one of the fine arts. They actually had poetry at the Olympics many years ago. Did you realize that?
I had no idea. That's
They,
interesting.
yeah, they had painting and poetry were part of the Olympics.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So and I've been researching other poems, and they just found like the oldest poem written. It's like 4,000 years old,
Wow.
and it was written in cuneiform and translated. It was a love poem, and there's Virginia Woolf was a great novelist, but I was listening to something on NPR, and this researcher was going through her archives in a library and found two poems that she had written, one for her nephew and one for her niece. And they're like, she didn't write poetry. And it's like, well, obviously she did, and any writer who has been published has possibly dabbled in poetry first. And I just want to, encourage people, like, poetry can be the start to writing other things, stories, novels, fiction, fact, biographies, autobiographies, historical documentation. It can lead to something else. And don't give up. There's rhyming dictionaries out there. I don't use any Grammarly or anything in my writing. It's like, no, I don't want that autocorrect fixing my poem, because it's going to totally be absurd if that happens. So everything I handwrite first, but people are like, you can start talking into your phone to do your poems. I'm like, wow, okay, I'll explore that option too. But as long as my hand still works, I want to keep writing. It's like it flows through your fingertips, and it's a great way of expressing yourself. And if you get flustered talking in public, this is one way to put your feelings down. I actually met my husband, like I said, at a support group, and he said if I didn't write it down in a poem, I would ramble on for 10 minutes, and you only have so much time. I was like, that is fantastic. He was reading poetry. I was doodling and drawing eyes and squiggles and birds. And I just went up to him after one meeting and I said, hi, my name's Helen. We should get together and write a book sometime. And we were together 32 years, and we've got a lot of books put together, but we've never put them out there. So he told me, he says, I'm going to be like Van Gogh. I'll be famous after I'm dead. It's like, really? And how's that going to happen? He goes, you're going to do it for me. I was like, Okay, I got a big job ahead of me.
Are you working on publishing the books the two of you wrote together?
I haven't like taken that next step yet, but things are put together. He illustrated a lot of them. I had some illustrations as well. In doing my poetry, I try and keep his memory alive as well. And a lot of the poems I've written are about him, but then some of them I've written about conversations I overheard on a bus or somebody else's situation I knew. And sometimes he'd read it and he goes, "You can't put that out there. They'll think it's me." I was like, not everything is about you. Not everything is about me. And sometimes I just come up with stories in my head or I elaborate on a couple of things I overheard. So if I'm doing a public reading, sometimes I give a little explanation as to where the poem came from. He was encouraging me to. And he's like, when I'm gone, I want you to be happy. Do all the things you couldn't do because you were taking care of me. And now I have that time and that freedom to do things like that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I
So
hope you're able to publish your work together and your
yes, I've been talking to a woman who she's like, your work is beautiful. I love his stuff too, and we need to do a book of both of you. I said, "Oh, I'm working on that. I'm getting it together. I just have so many pieces of paper to go through, and I've got two briefcases full of his writings.
wow.
He journaled, he wrote little stories about his life, and I've written poems about his life to kind of sum it all up, which there's two poems in the High Prairie Poets book about him, and I think there's at least one or two in this new book, Dead Friends in New Mexico. His children are just amazed that I'm still doing this for him. And I want to do it because he's got grandchildren and there's a great grandchild now. And I want them to know their grandfather and what he experienced.
That's so beautiful. And it's so precious. I'm sure they cherish those poems and you
Yeah.
sharing the memory of him.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So some people are like, "Oh, you should just forget all that." And I'm like, 32 years, you don't forget.
No.
We had a long history together and a lot of it was related to the arts. I mean, we lived in Taos, because people are like, "Oh, you guys are creative. You should go up there." But when we came back to New Mexico, we stayed in Albuquerque for a couple of years, and I said, he's like, we got to go. This is great, but it's too small. We need a bigger place. I said, where do you want to move? He goes, well, either Taos or Roswell. He goes, but Taos is kind of cold, and I'm old. I'm too old for the cold. And I said, okay, I guess Roswell it is because we had been here before. I said, yeah, we got storage in Roswell, so let's go where our stuff is. And that's why we're here. And it's just been a great experience being here and connecting with the people in the arts fields, whether it's the lapidary and jewelry making or the ceramics and pottery. I actually won an award at the Eastern New Mexico State Fair last year for my ceramics.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. I wasn't going to take that piece. And then I said, "Oh, it's big. They need to fill up their showcase. I'll take this." And I go to look and I had to get somebody and say, "Excuse me, are all three ribbons for that piece?" And they're like, "Yeah. Yeah, that's best of show in your division and best of show overall." I was like, "Oh my god." I was shocked.
That's
Absolutely,
awesome.
absolutely amazed. So I want to continue with doing more ceramics, but right now poetry is like I can take this with me. I can write anywhere. I
Right.
have to go to a studio to do those particular types of arts. So, but I did go to the Triple the Love event last week. That was held at Bone Springs, the Miniature Arts Museum, and the library. The museum had their event at the library, and I was able to hold a paintbrush and actually maneuver things without it flipping out of my hand.
Oh, that's awesome. How was that? How was going to that event?
Oh, it was great. It was really fun. I have a friend that we've been going to those events since I moved here, and she's like, "Yeah, we haven't done any art in a long time. You got to come over." I said, "Okay." So we were doing watercolors at her house, and um, I did a scene from the old road where I lived and grew up, and I did a watercolor of it after, looking at some YouTubes and tutorials. I was like, I got to try that technique. So I did that. Her sister brought a frame over. It had a Peter Hurd print in it, and she wanted it reframed. So she gave us the frame, and my picture fit perfect.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I didn't have room on my walls, so I had my friend leave it at her house for like 3 years.
Oh,
And now I have room on my walls. I've rearranging, and my husband's an artist. I did art, and we've our walls are packed. I mean, I don't know if you can see behind me. There's one of his big paintings back there, and um, it's like, well, I've sold some of his work at a memorial show, but eventually I want to have a show with his big works in it and the poetry, and kind of kind of make him like Van Gogh and make him a little more famous.
yeah. That is beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. But his writings are really intense, some of them. So and I've got some intense poetry. I wrote a whole series of poems while I had shingles.
Oh, okay.
And that's a disgusting disease. This was cathartic for me to be able to write and express what I was going through. And I put it together. It's about 14 poems going through each stage of the shingles disease. And I sent it to my family members, and two of them went to the doctors right away to get their shingles shot. They're like, we
Oh,
don't want to experience this. And the one was like, I had to stop reading. It was so painful to read what you had been going through. So when I perform those poems in public, I usually tell people, I might need you to sign a waiver of release because you might be going to your doctor right after I read this. And somebody actually, she works at a doctor's office. She says, you should get in touch with the shingles vaccine people. Maybe they could use your poems in advertisements if it's that convincing. I was like, okay. Yeah, another thing for me to do, try and get my poetry to the shingles vaccination people. So like I said, it can be it can change lives when they read my poetry. And I wasn't expecting them to immediately say I couldn't read it anymore. It was so painful.
oh yeah.
So I said, it's great because I know that my message is getting across.
Right. Right.
You don't want this to happen to you. And I've had it twice in my life now. So that's how I recognized it the second time because of where it was happening. I'm like, oh, I woke up, what? Oh my God, I have shingles.
Oh no.
And hopefully it'll help people, convince them to get the vaccine and
Yeah.
don't get this. Please don't get this. It's awful. And as you get older, I guess there's more chance of it happening. But I had it when I was 15 years old. And people are
This-
like, that doesn't happen to young people. I said, oh God, you can get it any time of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not considered just an old age disease, but they're worried about older people getting it because if you get it anywhere near your eyes, you can go blind from it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and you that nerve damage, I've still have nerve damage at 4 years after having the disease.
Oh wow.
So, it's not just one event for people, it can continue.
Right.
So yeah, my poetry goes into all corners of life. And collaborative poems are pretty cool, working with somebody. But when I joined the group, I never realized there were groups of people out there meeting to do poetry. And I actually have a cousin back in Jersey City who was part of the poetry slam scene, and he had the Jersey City poets. and they came out to Albuquerque and did the poetry slam. So that's why I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could have been involved in that. But now there's another poetry slam in Albuquerque, and I'm like, I got to get to this one. Yeah, I'm
Definitely.
going. I'm going.
Yeah. Your groups, that the three separate groups, usually about how long do they meet for? Is it like 2, 3 hours? Is it an
It's
hour?
about an hour and a half or so, and it's just getting together, reading them, critiquing them sometimes, and sometimes we have enough time, and to go around like 3 or 4 times, so we each get to speak several times with our works.
Now, this book, can this be purchased online anywhere, or do people have to find you and purchase it from you?
Actually, it's only in Macedonia. It's not on any site yet.
Okay.
uh, I have to ask our friend who got us published there, if there is a chance of it becoming an ebook or
Yeah.
going online. I purchased 100 copies myself,
Okay.
and I have them, and I bring them to our poetry group meetings, so they could come there and find me, or I am on Facebook.
Okay.
Just Helen Walters. I don't do Instagram yet. I haven't figured that out, and I'm seriously going to consider YouTubing.
Yay, you should
So
definitely.
yeah, so if they want to come to one of the groups, they could purchase that book. It's $15, and only because of the postage that from Macedonia was quite a lot of stamps on that box.
I bet. Wow. And 100 copies. Yeah, I picked this up from you at one of the art shows I saw you at. But
Yeah,
I
I
don't,
was I was at the gallery on Main Street for a while, and I had it for sale there. They can get in
yeah.
touch with me at one of the poetry groups, and I will have them for sale. And
Excellent.
all the proceeds are basically going back into the poetry group. I've set aside some cash from it so that we could publish again. And that's why I want to do another collaborative work with other poets and actually throughout the state of New Mexico, if they want to get in touch with me and get involved with this. I think a New Mexican anthology of present day poets would be very cool, because
Excellent.
I know they're out there.
Yes, definitely. Like you said, Taos is known as an art town.
Yes, yeah. And I still have a couple friends up there.
I think it's wonderful, that Roswell supports poets and singer-songwriters.
Mhm.
There is a small art scene here, but there is an art scene, which is nice.
Yeah, it's actually larger than I think people realize, with the amount of authors that live here, and writers and poets and potters and sculptors. The artists in residence program has brought lots of people to Roswell, and they have stayed. Many of them have come back here to live.
True. That's true.
Yeah, there is the Creative Arts New Mexico, and they're doing something in April 12th, I believe is the date. So I'm going to try and schedule some poetry readings then for the Arts in New Mexico Day.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah,
really cool. Where will you be reading your poetry at?
I'm not sure yet.
Uh,
Stellars has invited me to do a book signing over there.
Oh, nice.
So when I get copies of this book, Dead Friends in New Mexico, Missing Them, I'm going to try and schedule a poetry reading over there. So that timing might be perfect.
Oh, excellent. That will be so cool.
Yeah. So, and like I said, I'm talking with the other two museums, the miniature arts. They actually have some of my little bear fetishes that I carved in there, and canceled stamp earrings that I created. They have them in their gift shop. And of course, part of the reason that I went to them is because I just love the idea of what they're doing with miniatures, the doll houses, the curious collections. And my husband's paintbrush people are on display in the drawers of joy right now.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he worked as an artist in a studio creating hand block printed clothing, and he collected the paintbrushes that were used and they're throwing away, and it's like the amount of paint on them made him go into making faces and personalities out of these old paintbrushes. And when Nancy Fleming saw them, she's like, "I gotta have them in my collection." I was like, "Cool."
Oh, that's so cool. We'll have to go check it out.
Yeah, before the show is over, because she's got a new show that's coming in, not sure when, but she's like, "Tell your friends, come and see the doll collection now." And, I said, "Okay, yeah, I gotta push my paintbrush people."
All right, we'll have to go check it out.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really fun. Like, when I'm at the farmer's market and people come with kids, I was like, "Have you been to the Mini? You gotta go there." We actually had a couple from Germany wander into our open mic night at Stellar's, and they were very impressed with what we were doing, and we sat and chatted with them. They're like, "We heard you talk about the farmer's market." And I'm like, gave them the date, the time, "Come tomorrow morning." They came, they bought a book, they bought some crafts, and they went to the Mini, and then they came back and thanked me for being a great tour guide.
Oh, nice.
And when they come back for the UFO festival, they said they will definitely look us up.
Yeah. I mean, when you come to visit as just a tourist, you don't realize that
Mhm.
there's the Miniature Museum or the
Yes,
Anderson Museum of Contemporary Art or
yes,
even the Roswell Museum. Those weren't places that we went to until we moved here. So,
right, right. And we used to have the Roswell Fine Arts League putting on an international art show,
oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and they would actually, the museum would give us the one room, and we'd have, like, a week-long show there,
Oh,
and
cool.
they unfortunately have the manpower in the club to do something like that anymore.
Oh, bummer.
And yeah, and a lot of the things that we used were, to hang things, the panels were stored at the Roswell Adult Center, which everything's wiped out now. So I don't know if we'll have that international show again ever, but it was known, very well known throughout the arts community that we had this art international show. I hope that we can get the art museum back up and running, in a shorter period of time than they're talking about, and then we get our arts programs back.
Yeah, definitely. I know last I heard they were talking about 3 years,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is so long. And then the adult center, are
Mhm.
they planning on reopening or are they going to relocate?
Good question.
You don't know.
Um, because walls in there crumbled from the
Oh,
water.
oh wow.
Yeah, and the lapidary lab, there was a machine that you cut rocks with that was filled with oil, and it mixed with the water and contaminated every surface that the water touched.
Oh no.
And the machines were lifted, and one of them put a hole through the wall, and, it's I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen with that, but that was just major. Three major places wiped out by that flood.
I know, and all like amazing places,
Mhm.
community centers, and it's just so sad that they all were
Yeah.
devastated. Yeah.
I wanna see the community built back up again, and I wanna do things to help the community and help the people that were affected, and the pottery is going on again. They've contracted with Bone Springs,
Oh,
which is
okay.
an art gallery that's run by Miranda Howe, and she's doing the classes over there now, an open studio, and we're very lucky that she had everything set up ready to go. Not as many classes, but it's something. And there's a few potters with their own studios that are still producing.
Right. Well, I'm glad Bone Springs was able to help, and I know the Anderson Museum has been hosting
Yes.
some things as well, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in a sense, I think it's brought our artists in the community closer together because we're all working for the same thing, is to rebuild those art centers and the senior center there, and even our convention center. I mean, everything's got to be moved. It's just incredible that they had people on the rooftop of our convention center during that flood.
That's so crazy to me that, I mean,
Yeah.
who would have thought?
Really, really, nobody knew would ever happen. I mean, we're in the desert and people are like, "What do you mean Roswell flooded?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah. Yeah." I mean, I had people calling from all over because it was on the national news.
Right.
It's gonna be a long journey.
Hmm.
But I'm there. I'm going to support it with my arts and poetry and, do some marketing for it. And I love to promote things. If something good's happening, I'll let you know about it.
Yeah.
I hope that I can, just get people to the right place. And I network a lot. And I'm like, oh, I know somebody that does that. Let me give you their number. Oh, let me call them. Let's get you hooked up. You could work really good with that person, or this person has that kind of thing that you need. So really happy to be a part of the artists community here and the poetry society and keeping it going. That's the thing. Keep it going and get new members in to keep this going, because we all don't know when we're not going to be here, and we want somebody to carry on our work.
So your
Right.
books, this one, and your dead friends in New Mexico, missing them. That one you can buy on Amazon.com. It's $10 for the physical book.
Mhm.
And
And if you do ebooks, go to Bookleaf Publishing, because they're the ones that I took the challenge with, and they publish it as an ebook, and they're the ones that got it on Amazon for me.
oh, that's awesome.
And
How
you know
much
what?
it,
It
oh,
was $50 to take the challenge.
oh wow.
That was it to get
That's
me published.
that's amazing.
Yeah. So I encourage people to find Bookleaf Publishing, do that challenge. One of the poets that came to our open mic had done it, and her book was Hope. And it was her grieving process writing her poems. And she took the challenge, had it published, and it's, they're just little books, 32 pages or so, not very big. So they're inexpensive.
How
And
much is the ebook?
I'm not sure because it's in rupees.
Oh, okay.
So it says 300, but I'm like, that's not dollars.
Right.
I think it comes out to maybe like $5 or something.
Okay.
It's really inexpensive.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll be able to get copies and have them at the readings. And it's like I kind of made a mistake. I ordered and then the page disappeared. I'm like, where did it go? And I found it again, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to get this many. I ordered it twice.
Oh no.
It's okay though. It's okay because the poets in the group, a couple of them are like, I want to get your book. All right, when you get it, get me a copy, because I don't do computers works. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll get some. So I will have a few at my poetry groups too. So
Excellent. Well, that's perfect. We can get one there.
yeah, and then they've actually asked me to do another challenge, and I was like, "Ooh, well, I did that one. I could certainly do another challenge."
Yeah. Do you know
So
what you're gonna do this year for the challenge? What your or is do they give you a theme or do you pick the
no, you can pick whatever you want. So I'm thinking of more of stuff for kids.
Oh, okay. That will be
You
great.
know, yeah, bird watching. I've got stuff about blue jays in the yard out here, and dogs and balloons and toys, and stuff that kids would appreciate and enjoy reading about, and parents too. But I want to encourage the younger people to get involved. So I
Yeah.
think the next one would be more geared towards the younger people and lighthearted stuff. I mean, the dead friends, it sounds morbid, but my mother always said I was morbid. So I'm like, okay, that fits right in. But it was a challenge around Halloween.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I wrote it. But they're not depressing poems. It's each one is a little bit about the person's life
Right.
and something fun facts about them, and just honoring them in that way. One of them is about Jim Gill from the Roswell Seed Company. And he was a major source of information for the farming community here and anybody with gardens. And we met him through the state fair here. He was the one that put it on and the judge. And I thought I'd include him in the book as a memorial to him. I think people will find this book pretty interesting. They may know some of the people, they may not. I even included one about the unknown people that have passed and the descansos, the little altars that they set up where they pass, they put the flowers on the cross and they visit every year. And we don't know who they were, but we know somebody passed at that spot. And I just wanted to memorialize that a little bit too. So there's a lot of stuff that I put in there that I just think people can relate to when they're thinking about loved ones they've lost. And maybe it'll encourage somebody else to come up with a memorial poem, get their grief out that way too. I think the people in New Mexico are pretty awesome, which is why I chose to write about the people that I knew here in New Mexico. Although a few poems are written about folks in other places, but I was living here when I heard about their passing.
Oh, okay.
So that's the connection there.
Writing is such a healing art form. It heals you, it allows you to work through your pain. I know,
Yes.
painting and drawing can help that as well, but getting your feelings down on paper really seems to rewire your brain to be able, you're honoring the person, you're honoring
Mhm.
your feelings, you're discussing your feelings, and then you get to share your feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes people are like, oh, I didn't know that about them. And it's like, oh, I exposed a secret. It's okay. They're gone. They won't
Right.
know. They won't care. I am sharing the poems that I've written about some of these people with their family members. And they're just awed that I would think to write that and then to share it with them.
Right.
Hopefully, it also broadens my audience because they'll want to say, oh, you got a poem about Jim Gill. I want to get that book. you know,
Right.
so it's a little bit of marketing in there too. And I was a commercial art and advertising design major. So I've had courses in marketing and I'm just better at marketing other people than myself. But
Well, hopefully you can.
now is the time to learn to promote what I'm doing.
Exactly. Well,
So
thank you, Helen, so much for joining us tonight. I
thank
really
you.
appreciate you, and I appreciate all the work that you do for the Roswell community and, you
Thank
know,
you.
m- making tourists known about the cool things happening in Roswell and welcoming new people like Nikolai and I into the community. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.